Okay, here we are live for the UK election results, and they are starting to come through. We are looking at, I think the results are as somewhat expected, although the big change from the polls is that the reform vote has definitely been significantly stronger than some polls predicted. The Labor vote at the moment doesn't look to be as strong as expected. It is looming uh, around about a 4% swing to Labor, which in the scheme of things isn't spectacular. There are four seats which have been declared. So the three of those seats were safe Labor seats as it was. So the seats of Blyth and Ashington has been declared as a Labor retain, a 4.4% swing. So it's been pretty consistent. The Conservative vote has dropped 21%, with the majority of that going to Reform with a 15% increase. The Greens have a slight increase. The Liberal Democrat vote slightly down in that seat. Then we have the seats of Sunderland Central, again, a reasonably safe Labor seat. Conservative vote again down 21%. Look, this is. So we're just trying to get the individual. I think they're the actual overall results, actually. So that's the overall. So 4% down. Just trying to get the individual seat results there. So Swindon was one which has been the first seat to officially swing to Labor from the Conservative Party. So the result here was actually an 8.2% swing to Labor, a 24.7% swing against the Conservatives. I mean, that's remarkable. Seat was held by over 8% by the Conservatives going into this election, but that's a 17.5% seat margin now for Labor. So the swing for Labor in that Swindon South seat, now we're dealing with very minimal numbers at the moment, but we are looking at so 5 seats now declared for Labor, but 4 of those have been in seats that you would not expect the Conservatives to be any chance in. These were widely predicted to be Labor seats. The seats of Washington and Gateshead has just come through, so that's another Labor win. So we don't have any Scottish votes forward yet. We don't have any Welsh votes through. But in terms of and again, I think this is probably going to be more the case in the traditional Labor seats where that Reform vote was predicted to be quite high. I mean, it's 24.9% at the moment compared to 16.9% for the Conservatives. I think that will change. But at the moment, based on the seats we've seen, Reform have an 8% lead over the Conservative Party. I don't. Well, we'll keep watching, keeping an eye on the seats. The Swindon South result, I feel that will be more in keeping with what's going to happen. I just can't see those numbers continuing to go that strongly in favour for the Reform Party over the Conservatives. But You just don't know. So I think that's the enough to declare that Labor. I think you can. It was looking very much like a done deal anyway, but it will be a Labor majority. I think from even the early results, you can comfortably declare that. All the polling has stated this is the case, and I think we can state with a degree of certainty now that Labor will be the majority party. Keir Starmer will be the new Prime Minister of the UK. Rishi Sunak has not been elected. Big question really is now of who will be the opposition, and that's what we'll be checking out. Interesting that the exit poll had Conservatives winning 131 seats. That may be optimistic, but we will see on that one. Reform was tipped to get 13 seats. The SNP, we will wait for those Scottish results. They are predicted to fall to 10. I think that's 48 going into this. So that would be a significant drop. 25 others, be it in 25 others, that does seem quite high. Plaid Cymru on 4, Green on 2, but it says others 19. So that would be the Northern Ireland seats, because they don't have the exit polls in Northern Ireland. The Northern Ireland parties are different, and the Sinn Féin, they don't actually. They'll have members stand and they'll have members be elected, but they don't actually have any members go to the parliament. So, as expected, somewhat at this stage, because we are getting predominantly seats from traditional Labor areas. As expected, the Conservative vote has almost fully switched over to the Reform Party. But the Swindon South, and again, it is just one electorate, but we are seeing the Reform Party receiving about 13.8%, so 14%. Conservative vote has dropped almost 25% in the seat of Swindon South. So Heidi Alexander will become the new member for Swindon South. That is the first change. Robert Buckland will not be the member in the future. So Heidi Alexander for Swindon South, the first we would expect of many seats to be changing hands. The early results are very much as predicted at the moment. Again, with this so few seats at the moment, where we're unable to get a bigger picture of where the Liberal Democrat vote. Again, it's just a little bit hard to predict, considering we haven't really gone. Again, we don't want to off one seat, and I guess we're just looking at the that seat of Swindon South. Now Swindon South, I'm just looking at my notes here in terms of what was predicted for the seat of Swindon South, but I think that was pretty much as predicted for that seat. It was one that Labor were always going to be able to, were strongly expected to regain. The other seats, again, so the polling looks to have been particularly accurate at this time. But look, The results are quite minimal at this time. I will be providing some more live coverage as we go on, but at the moment it doesn't. I think we can say with a degree of certainty that it will be a officially a well, not officially, but Labor will have a majority government. It will be Keir Starmer who will be the next UK Prime Minister. And we can declare that because simply based on the few seats that we have coming through. If you're just joining us now, as the results coming through are very much saying that the polls were right. The swing against the Conservatives is at the high end as expected. They have only declared 5 seats at the moment, but they have all gone Labor. There is one switch. Is the Swindon South seat has officially gone to Labor. So that will be a big. And looking at those figures for Swindon South, Heidi Alexander, an 8% swing to Labor. So you would expect that would be mainly the votes coming back from the 2019 election. So you would think a lot of that vote would be coming back from there. The Conservatives, a 24.7% drop in vote in that Swindon South. Now, the reason I'm looking at this one is it's probably a bit more indicative of what's going to go on in the rest of the country. As predicted, the reform vote has been very high in traditional Labor constituencies. The Labor vote hasn't particularly increased that much in the northern seats. Only about a 4% swing there. So that's interesting. So in terms of the combined Conservative Reform vote, that is about the same. If you combine them together, so in Australia, you might have picked up an Australian accent. In Australia, we have preferential voting, so it would have been very interesting to see how those seats would have played out with preferential voting, because there has not been an increase for Labor in the Tyne and Ware seats that have been declared. Well, not significant, about 4%. So, but it's been that switch from Conservative voters to Reform in those traditional Labor seats, which has been noticeable. The vote has been better in the one electorate we've got. It will be very interesting to see how that goes. Now, it'll be also interesting to see that the Liberal Democrats vote actually went down by 3.5%. Now, look, Swindon voters, I would imagine, are pretty switched on. They could be using tactical voting there, knowing that it was a two-party race between Labor and the Conservatives. Conservative voters haven't traditionally had to think about tactical voting, so the protest vote or just switching to Reform is more likely to be occurring with that. Our results page, so we're still waiting for more results to come through, but at the moment we have 5 results. Swindon South, the first of, we would expect many seats to be switching sides. That again, we're going off one result, so we don't want to get too set thinking that will set the pattern. There is definitely a distinct difference between the northern seats up in the Sunderland area, in the Tyne and Ware region. So that's definitely a case of, so we'll just keep an eye on that one, because it's going to be an interesting one to see how if the traditional Labor seats continue to be in that favour. That Liberal Democrat vote is interesting. The 3.5%, which again, I'd like to see a few more. There are quite a few seats we haven't really seen so far. Some of the seats, while we wait for some more results, some of the seats which look like will be very close, and we'll get a bit of a guide of just how big the swing will be. One seat is the seat of North Bedfordshire. It's the polling suggests it was one of those ones where the polling had been split. Some had given a narrow Conservative victory, some had given a narrow Labor victory. The bookies had it pretty close. The Labor a slight favourite in that one. Now that would kind of, I think, give an indication of just how big the swing is. And so that one there. Another one which is of interest is the Brigg and Immingham seat in Lincoln. This one's been slightly tipped to go to Conservative. Again, there's a real split. There's probably about 40 electorates where 40 to 50 electorates where there was a real split in the pollsters. They couldn't decipher. So in Bedfordshire, it was Bedfordshire North was one that the pollsters were very much split on. The bookies had Labor slightly in front in that one. Just looking at my notes here as well, other seats which were so looking in Lincoln, Brigg and Immingham was one which was split amongst a lot of the pollsters. That was almost a 2-2 split there. Berkshire Maidenhead, that'll be an interesting one to see how that one goes. Another one in so this one's interesting. Sleaford and North Hykeham, I hope I've pronounced that right. The pollsters more and more went for a Labor victory in that seat. And yet, on the other side of the coin, the bookies were very strongly in favour of the Conservatives, but I don't know how much you can read into that one. And probably the big thing to be taking note of is just how many seats how many seats that of those 50-50 go. Is it a 50-50 split of the 50-50 seats? Is it a case of some will go they predominantly go back to the Conservatives? Do they predominantly go to Labor? The split vote from Reform and Conservative will be very interesting. But again, we're just going. It's hard to go off one result. But there, if you just join us, the North and South divide or change in votes. That the move against Labor definitely hasn't been stopped in the Tyne-Wear area. I think that would be one on a positive day for Labor, of course, but that would be one that I imagine that they would be concerned about in the long term of, are they losing those and how do they get those voters back? Because it's only been a 4% swing in those seats, and that they would, I'd imagine that they would be quite alarmed by that. That there is only that they haven't really gained back those holes. That they've actually now lost a lot of their traditional voters in the Sunderland area, and even Newcastle upon Tyne area. They've lost them to the Reform Party, and that's an interesting result. Now we do have one more, Newcastle upon Tyne Central and West, as expected. This is a Labor gain. Labor retain, I should say. Let's see if we'll just have a check through those results. They're coming through very slowly at the moment, so we get to have a better time. Thanks for joining for my first live broadcast on the UK election. So, Labor's candidate, I hope I will get this right. Chi Onwurah, that's my best guess for that one. Now, looking at these votes, Labor have gained this seat, but they have lost 14%. The vote is down 14%. That's very interesting. Just trying to look at if there's a reason for that. There were two independent candidates who did quite well. Yvonne Ridley got 9% of the vote, and Habib Rahman 4% of the vote. Liberal Democrats 5%. Greens increased their vote from 3 to 8%. Conservative vote down 16%. Reform, well, I mean, if we're counting Brexit Party as Reform Party, their vote only went up 10%. But the Labor, that is Newcastle upon Tyne Central and West results. It's a Labor win, but nearly a 14% drop in the vote for Labor in that seat. Again, this is a night for Labor. Labor are going to, if you're just joining us, Labor will win a majority government. That looks certain, even just from 6 results that we have got so far. So the 6 results we have so far are all Labor seats, but there's only 5 from traditional Labor areas. But the nature of the swing has been significant. Some interesting results in terms of the Labor vote. Again, we need some more votes, but it definitely has not improved dramatically in the Newcastle upon Tyne and Sunderland area. So the Tyne and Wear counties, and it's a very Labor have comfortably won those seats, but more from the case of the split of the Conservative and Reform vote. And as we're just looking about that Newcastle upon Tyne result, which a 14% drop in the vote for Labor, they have held it, but clearly the northern parts of England, there is still that. That was a major reason for Brexit occurring. The 2019 vote, even though Corbyn was a bit on the nose, there's no doubt that the Brexit conversation that definitely had an impact on these seats tightening up. But Labor really haven't significantly gained back those votes. It's a 4% swing in the other 4 seats that we have results for. So they were Blythe and Ashington, Houghton and Sunderland South, Sunderland Central, and Washington and Gateshead South. So all those seats have gone have had about a 4% swing to Labor, with a huge about a 20% swing against the Conservatives, and 4% going to Labor and about 15 to 16% of that going to the Reform Party. But with the 2 results, probably most Newcastle upon Tyne, perhaps a one-off, but the Swindon South electorate is the one that we know has changed hands, and that vote seems to be a distinctly different from the others. Just running through some of I was just going, as we wait for more results to come through, just looking through some of the other seats that we're looking out for in terms of tight seats. In the seat of Mid Buckinghamshire, polling, there was one pollster that had Labor with a 10%, and this is the variations you get with these individual seat polling, but like Mid Buckinghamshire had a 10%. One pollster had predicted Labor by 10%, others had Conservatives by 16%. So you do have to take these individual seating polls a little bit with a grain of salt. Conservatives were strongly backed by the bookies there. In Staffordshire, the scene of Stone, Great Worley, and Penkridge. A real split in the pollsters. If anything, the pollsters gave that one to Labor, but the bookies were still leaning to the Conservatives. I always feel like the bookies will have inside information, but perhaps I'm overestimating their knowledge of things. Another Lincolnshire, and this one will be an issue. The Lincolnshire seat of South Holland and the Deepings. Now, this one looks like it'll be Conservatives v Reform, and that will really test how much the Conservative voters jumped off because of these are seats they won by margins of over 50%. So we're not talking small numbers here. We're talking significant numbers. So yes, that one will be an interesting one. Seat of how the Liberal Democrat votes goes. The sort of seats we'll be looking at there are the seats of Chippenham. Liberal Democrats are predicted to win that seat. We really don't have a read on the Liberal Democrat vote yet. The seat of Torbay, that'll be another one which the Liberal Democrats will be looking at for a win. So we are basically just doing a live feed as results coming through, reporting them straight to you. Out of 650, they've counted 6, but even from that, it can be safely stated. If I'm the first media pollster to call it, I'll call it. It is going to be a Labor victory. The significant vote away from the Conservatives to the Reform Party in particular. We are still waiting to see how that Labor vote holds up. They will win. They will win with a significant majority. How big that majority is, we don't know. If there is genuine concern about Conservatives losing the opposition, that would be the biggest at the moment. The other one to have a look at as well is the seats, in terms of who will be the next Conservative leader, who will be the next Tory leader, and will the Conservative Party and the Reform Party effectively merge? There are so many different aspects to this which we just don't know at the moment. It's a very, very interesting point in time. We are waiting for more. I'm assuming we will get votes flooding in very, very, very quickly once they come in. So that's why we're talking a bit in general about different seats. The majority of seats from the Tyne and Ware area. So look, I'm going to give it about 5-10 more minutes, I think, to see if we can get some more results coming through. Otherwise, I might go off the air and come back on in about an hour or so. We have no results from London. We have no results from Wales. We have no results from the only counties we have had results from. Tyne and Ware is the main one we have had significant results from. And we also have a Wiltshire result from the Swindon South electorate, the one electorate, which has so far changed hands. The Conservative leader discussion will be very interesting because who holds their seats will be a large determiner as to who can actually be the leader. I would doubt Rishi Sunak would want to be the leader after his somewhat disastrous campaign. And if he's not Prime Minister, I doubt he's going to stick around in opposition. That's the other thing which hasn't really been looked at is, will we have a stack of by-elections from Conservatives who are devastated and decide to leave? I would be, I believe the Richmond and Northallerton seat, I believe it's called, that Rishi Sunak holds, that seat will. Look, there was one or two pollsters that suggested that that could be lost. It seems unlikely. That's in the North Yorkshire seat of Richmond and Northallerton. I can't really see that one falling. There was one pollster out of 6 said that could fall, and the majority were saying that will be a hold for Rishi Sunak. But even if I would suspect that will become a Labor seat. If they don't get it this time, they'll get it at the by-election. And how many of those other seats will be members who go, yeah, I'm done, who may be held on hoping for a shock win or didn't have time to think through their options. That would that will be interesting to see. And so, even who the candidates are for the next Conservative leader, I still get a feeling it'll be Nigel Farage. I I think that his strong campaigning and being in power, which he looks like he will get in the seat of Clacton, which we wait for that result. I truly believe that he might be the new Conservative leader. Put your comments down if you're interested about who you think it might be. But looking for positives for the Conservative Party, and looking for it. The seat of Tonbridge in Kent, I reckon that was some pollsters that predicted Labor might win that. I think that will be a safe Conservative hold. Some of the London seats, Old Bexley and Sidcup, I would expect that they are definitely favoured to hold on to that one. Broxburn will be interesting. Cornwall South East looks at 50-50. Some of these seats, and a lot of these seats have had an over 50% margin. I mean, it really, there hasn't been an election like this one. In English history in a way. I mean, it's just been such my there is some talk that the Conservatives will actually gain some seats, which is, considering what's happening elsewhere in the country, is quite remarkable. But the Scottish seat of Gordon and Buchan, that could be a Conservative gain. So the Conservatives, the exit poll, which came out tonight, where they went through how many seats we gained and lost. Very interestingly, that it was the Scottish Party vote that was it was much worse than expected. I think they were only predicting to give them 10 seats. So such a massive change. I actually had a video on my channel about Scotland, just a brief 1-minute YouTube short, and it talks about how they were flying high. I mean, it loomed, especially with Brexit, and that Scotland would have become. There'd be another election, they would have their independence, and now that the independence campaign seems miles off. The Scottish Party look just in a shambles with everything that happened with Nicola Sturgeon. So it will now be very, very interesting to see if it's quite as calamitous as that. They are predicting that, and polling did suggest that Wales will have no Conservative seats. We wait to see if that happens. Thank you for the people who have been joining in and listening and along. No, it's small numbers at this stage, but thank you for joining in and listening. I think I might sign off temporarily for now, just because there are no results coming through. But thank you for joining us. It's currently 10 a.m. in Melbourne, where I am. It's obviously 1 a.m. over in England. It is. I'm probably going to go off air until 10:30 our time, which is 1:30 a.m. your time. But to sign off, and thank you for joining the live feed. It will be officially, well, I keep saying officially, it will definitely be. It's a Labor government. Keir Starmer will be the next UK Prime Minister, as predicted by the polls, not a shock result. Early results definitely show that the Conservative vote has significantly dropped. It will be a Labor majority based on the voting we've seen. And the one thing which might be of a little surprise is the fact that Labor have not made significant gains in regaining voters in the Sunderland and northern areas, those voters seem to have more moved to Reform rather than go back to Labor. There's a small swing of around 4% overall, although even in strong independent candidates and even Green vote has been up, especially in the seat of Newcastle upon Tyne Central. That the vote hasn't, there was actually a significant drop away from the Labor candidate in that seat. The other seats in the Sunderland area have more gone to the Reform Party, but from the one result we do have from the South, specifically Swindon South, the first Labor gain we would think of many, the Labor vote has, you would say that that's about an 8, well, it was an 8% swing in that seat. Thank you for joining me for now. I look forward to coming back on in about half an hour with a bit more results, and I hope you can join me then. Thank you all.